Oh, baby, it is about to be an interesting one today. We are ranking the top 12 main ARs in Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War, the best ARs in the game, and I'd imagine it's gonna be a little bit controversial. I'll be excited to see what you guys have to say down in the comments below, and we have a ton to talk about today after an insane weekend. I was out of town yesterday, so that's why there was no breakdown video, but my goodness, it's going to get interesting for sure. We'll be talking about all of the matches on the podcast tomorrow, so be on the lookout for that. But today, like I said, the top 12 main ARs in Call of Duty, and we have a ton to get into. So without further ado, let's get right into this one. Let's go. So first of all, we're judging all of these guys based off of the impact that they have on the map. And that's a pretty broad range of different skills that they bring to the table, whether that's communication, their gun skill, their ability to position themselves, the playmaking ability. There's a vast multitude of things that we're judging. This is specifically for Cold War and the impact that they have on the map. So at number 12, we have Aqua. And again, all of these guys are insanely close together. It's not like some massive tier gap between all of these guys. They can have massive impacts on the map, and even number 12 can still be a very valuable asset to a team. But Aqua started off the year incredibly hot. We talked a lot about him in tier list videos throughout the year. He's been a pretty big mover across the board where he has been this year because of the performances he had inside game. Recently though, even though they had a fantastic series against LA Thieves where they won 3-1, I still think he can make some strides as we head through the last stage and a half here. But for now, I'm gonna leave him at number 12. So at number 11, we have Assault on LAG. Again, another player who he can be very reliable and a very solid player for a team, but the upside slang and what you hope to see game in and game out, and from the massive slang ability that some of the top tier ARs have right now in COD, we'll talk about a little bit later. Assault is still very solid and very reliable, but I don't think he can be the best player on a championship team or anything along those lines. At the end of the day, he's got to fall down the list a little bit. LAG has been just solid, competitive this season, but they've never made that stride inside the top 7, top 6. In these most recent series, we saw Assault have some struggles, especially in the Empire series, in the hardpoints, especially like on Moscow was a tough one. The game mode that sticks out the most for me for Assault would be Control and his positioning, specifically recently since stage 3, beginning of stage 3, inside of Control and the struggles that LAG has had in that mode as a whole. Those are the kind of questions I have with Assault and why he's not higher up on the list. But he really has been a valuable player inside of Hardpoint and Search and Destroy for this team. It's a really tough argument to make with some of these guys. It's right in here for Assault, and that's why he falls in at number 10. So at number 10, this was really, really tough because this player has made a lot of impact on the map. In certain game modes, he's very, very good, and that's Shawnee on the London Royal Ravens. He, at times, can make some incredible plays, especially in Hardpoint and Control. Search and Destroy is the big time question mark, well, really for London as a whole right now. And like the struggles that they've had really for a while now, the past few months. At times, I absolutely love watching him play and the impact that he has on the map. Sometimes he cleans up these kills, he's frying, he shoots incredibly straight, and that's definitely an important aspect of his game and the value that he can bring on the map. But the inconsistencies in the game modes, especially inside Search and Destroy, is kind of why he ends up falling down here for me on the list, just when you compare him to some of the other guys and the high-end impact that they can make on the map. In a ranking video, it comes down to player v player and the slightest differences in these guys, and he ended up falling down the list here. Alrighty, so at number 9, we have a player who recently rejoined the starting lineup, and that's Major Maniac on the Minnesota Rokkr. So since he joined, I've actually been really surprised by his performances inside of Respawn's Hardpoint and Control. Really, really solid. And when he joined the roster again, everybody thought, all right, S&D is going to be where this team dominates. And that wasn't necessarily how it went off the rip, but we just saw him absolutely fry in some of these S&Ds, making some massive plays against Seattle, some 3v1, some dominant clutches, some big time plays. And as a whole, I've just been pleasantly surprised by how solid Major Maniac has been since he's joined the starting lineup. We always see the classic Major Maniac who's out there rotating, playing for spawns early, and we definitely saw that like in the checkmate match against Seattle, where he's rotating early, playing inside wood, doing all these types of things. The classic Major Maniac stuff. And as a whole, I really, really like how Major Maniac plays. But again, you fell down to number 9 on the list. I think he could definitely move up as we start seeing the Rokkr improve and a little bit more longevity and consistency for Major Maniac. But we'll keep him at number 9 for now. So at number 8 now is where it gets pretty interesting, and it's crazy that this player is currently at number 8, because who would have thought that heading into this year? with how talented and the legend that he is. At number 8, we have Crim right now, and that's crazy to say, but it hasn't been a great stretch for him. Obviously, in the New York Empire match, you know, as a whole, Empire looked very, very solid, but Crim didn't have the greatest of series, and that's kind of been the theme for Dallas the past few weeks, past few months now, is the lack of consistency from their ARs, whether it's Crim, whether it's Fellow, whether it's ILLeY. And there's just been a major disconnect with how Crim is wanting to play. At times, he still makes the big time heads up plays. Like one moment that really stuck out to me was in the game against London on Apocalypse. He made a play to block the spawns and win the rotations for Dallas and get a lot of that time. Like those types of really smart heads up plays is something that Crim can still absolutely do. And inside of Search and Destroy, he's still been very solid, especially like when you watch him on Express, he is frying on Express. And so we see that upside play from Crim and what he can bring to a team still. But it's just incredibly inconsistent. Inside of respawns, there's still a lot of question marks. And so that's just why he's not higher on the list from a few of the other guys where we've seen still this year the high slaying upside, but the potential to absolutely dominate and take over a map at times. And we haven't seen that from Crim this year. I can see the argument that the intangibles and the direction that he brings to a team is worth putting him higher on the list, but it was just really, really tight for me. And that's why I gave the tiebreaker for me to number 7 on the list, who is Octane. So there's some really close names here between some of these guys like Crim and now Octane. Some of the other guys are on the list, but man, obviously Seattle has had their struggles this year. I mean, that's an understatement. They're on quite the little match slide right now with losses, obviously most recently to Rokkr and Faze. At the end of the day, Octane though, when you watch it, you still see the dominant gun skill, the insane ability to win gunfights, pop off with 2 pieces, 3 pieces, and make massive game-changing plays around the map. That playmaker ability is still there for Octane. Obviously, the critique or the question is his positioning always, or how good is his positioning? Does his positioning put his team into a tough position to win? Is he not doing enough to allow his SMGs to succeed? Is there a communication problem? Is there an attitude problem? Obviously, those are the question marks that you have to ask, and you really have to dive into the minimap and check out with Octane's positioning. I still think there's still a lot of, obviously there's a lot of problems with how Seattle plays as a squad, but man, at the end of the day, Octane can still play for those streaks, impact the map in big time ways, and we saw that in those matches against like Rokkr, and they went 3-2 against LA Thieves recently. And Octane had some insanely impressive maps throughout that stretch. And like, if you look at the stats, again, stats are, you know how it is with stats. And we had a cool conversation with Faze Easy Mac, the analyst for Atlanta Faze, about stats and the deceptive nature of stats. And that's why I always say that stats can only mean so much, but he has been incredibly consistent on the year, and he's one of the best and top, 15 in all 3 game modes and a lot of the important stats. And Search and Destroy has been very, very, very good. So as a whole, I still really like Octane, but he's at number 7 on the list, and that's just how crazy stacked the ARs are right now. Now, number 6 on the list is none other than LA Thieves, now main AR, Kenny. So, technically he's the main AR, I guess. I mean, realistically, they have the most murky main AR situation in the league with him and Draza, and who really is the main AR. So I decided to have Kenny as the main AR on this list, even though it's, the most wishy-washy situation out of all teams by far. So Kenny's a really, really good player, man. And like, again, you continue to see that. They ended up losing to Faze 3-0 in their most recent match, but like some of the pop-offs that he has in that, where he's just popping a 3-piece where nobody should be getting those kills, Kenny has that ability. And again, you can still question how LA Thieves is playing certain situations, and it's a tough situation to play against Faze. Obviously, currently, they're coming off of back-to-back losses to Faze and to Paris, which is pretty tough to say the least. I still think that Kenny's an incredibly good player, and as an AR this year, he has been disgusting. And so we'll see if he ends up being a quote-unquote main AR in the future, or if this is more of just a meta thing right now with where the Krig is at in Cold War. But, his gun skill is disgusting, his playmaking ability, it's a really, really tough debate between him, Octane, Crim, and a few of these other guys on the list as well. But as a whole, I'm going to leave him at number 6 for now. He's an incredibly good player. Alrighty, so at number 5, we've got the main AR for OpTic Chicago, and that's of course Formal. So of course, OpTic is finding their groove again after struggling in the middle of the year, and Formal was definitely struggling as well. Obviously, that was highlighted in that Faze series where the connection was kind of the question there with the host and all that went down there with having the Atlanta host and all, but of course, that was a big time struggle for OpTic and really highlighting the struggles that they've been having as a team. But as a whole, Formal is on the rebound. That series against Paris was incredibly impressive. Of course, everybody's been talking about his in-game comms from that listen-in and the leadership that he's been showing with OpTic. And I mean, OpTic desperately needed somebody to step up in that regard. And so if Formal's going to be that guy, that's pretty exciting. And I still think that Formal's an incredibly nasty player. Obviously, OpTic's had their struggles, but really at the end of the day, Formal is the guy for him, especially in the playmaking that he's been showing in Search and Destroy lately has been really, really exciting. And his reads in S&D have been on point lately. And I think that's an incredibly valuable asset for a team, especially when he's going to be a vocal guy and he can make those calls and make those plays. And Formal's been doing that very, very well for OpTic. And they've looked good. Obviously, they lost 3-0 to Faze, and that's a tough L to take. But they had a really solid win against Paris. They had a really nice win against the Rokkr. And Formal's been a big part of that, man. He's been playing really, really well. And like I said, he's still a really valuable asset to this team. He's a great player. Formal's at number 5. So at number 4, we've got another player who I've been very high on for sure this year. And this is the guy who I took a little bit of slack for early on for saying he's nasty. And like, finally, I'm having a little victory lap here. He has been nasty. And that's, of course, Skies on the Florida Mutineers. Florida is finding their stride, and that's led by Skies and the dominance that he's had as a main AR. You know, he's really a really vocal leader for that team and someone they desperately need. And they have been on fire. And the streaks that they've got lately and the streak usage from Skies and from Florida has been awesome. And as a whole, like, you know, they competed with New York all the way through that series, and they beat like New York on APOC hardpoint. Skies was playing a really solid series as a whole. Against New York, and again, they come out and they're absolutely fine against like LAG and London. You gotta be insanely impressed with Skies and how he has played lately. I'm a big fan of how he plays, and his gunny is nuts. His reaction time across all 3 game modes, his positioning across all 3 game modes, how he plays in Search and Destroy. I just really love how Skies plays, and he brings so much to the table for this Mutineers team right now. And in Black Ops Cold War, Skies is just really good, and that's why he's inside the top 5 here at number 4. So at number 3, another guy that you may have heard of before. You know, he's won a few tournaments in his time, and that's Clayster for the New York Subliners. Of course, in stage 3, New York had an insane run, and Clay was dominating. I mean, hardpoint Clay was disgusting. Into stage 4, so far it's been a little bit tougher for Clay and for this squad, but of course they do have quite a few like pretty legitimate reasons with Asym being stuck in Canada, and of course people have been talking a lot about Hydra and his sickness that he's been having the past few weeks as well, which has not been doing them any favors at all. You've got to be really impressed with Clay and everything, the value and the impact that he has on the map and what he brings to the New York squad on a game-to-game basis. Whenever you're in those listen-ins, he is chirping 24/7. He is leading the squad. He's a vocal leader, of course, and we all know that for what he brings to the squad from an intangibles aspect. The calls that he makes, of course, we saw that like with the call that he made and told Hydra in the 1v1 against Simp on Express in the major winners finals last time around in round 11. And just the insane impact that he has on the game without even touching the controller is definitely impressive. And at the end of the day, he's still been shooting straight. He's been frying, and he's very consistent across all 3 game modes in his performances. You got to value that as well. And he's just been very good. And that's why he's at number 3 right now. So there was some pretty interesting debate between the top few here. And I settled with at number 2, having Insight from the Toronto Ultra. So my word, Insight has been probably the biggest surprise of the whole year with how dominant and how good he has been. Of course, from his rise from the AM scene in BO4 with Singularity, and then in Modern Warfare in the AM scene in Europe, coming over to the United States, getting signed as Toronto sub, and then getting subbed in for Methods, who's a really solid player. And he comes in, his impact is immediately seen. They make their run at stage 2, and they win stage 2, and they have been one of the top 3 teams since then, since Insight has joined the squad. And you know, obviously he brings a ton to this team across the board. The end of stage 3 and stage 4 hasn't been as dominant from a personal standpoint for Insight. He still is incredibly important to the success of the Toronto Ultra. And on the year, he has been unbelievable. And so at the end of the day, his gun skill is nuts. His playmaking ability is crazy. How many times have we seen him go on streaks in the second half of a game and win the match with those streaks because of just the insane ability that he has, the reason he can make. Insight is fantastic. He is really, really good at Black Ops Cold War, and you gotta reward that with one of these top few spots in these rankings. And if you haven't had the chance to really dive in and watch Insight and how he plays, man, go back over these past few months and watch some of these highlights, because he is making impact all over the map across all 3 game modes. He's awesome. So obviously at number 1 at this point, if you haven't pieced it together, it's of course Atlanta Faze. It's of course Arcitys. He has been on another level since the start of stage 3. We saw a pretty freaking good, you know, ILLeY Arcitys in the first half of this year. But since we turned the page to stage 3 and now into stage 4, Arcitys has only gotten better, and it's making Faze insanely scary. I mean, like the amount of times that we've seen now Arcitys make a clutch play in Search and Destroy, clutch up that 1v1 or get that important kill in S&D late in the rounds. I mean, this dude has been so clutch. But not only that, the amount of times that he's going in to make the insane play and clean up the mess behind, you know, Cellium or Simp or Abezy and play for those streaks and utilize those streaks is insane. He's been eating up the streaks in stage 4 especially, and he was the player of stage 3, the MVP of the stage 3 major. He was insanely good throughout stage 3, and that has only continued into stage 4. And Faze is so scary, man. With Arcitys playing like this and the absolute nastiness that is Cellium, Simp, and Abezy right now, they're now on another multi-digit win streak in map count. They're on an 11 map win streak now as of recording this, and they have just been absolutely insane. And Arcitys, of course, is the foundation for how they build that squad. He's as good at playing off of his teammates as anyone in the CDL. The communication with ILLeY and how he plays with those guys on the team is next to none. He's unbelievable. He sets them up for success, and in reverse, they set him up for success. And so for people who counter argue that it's so easy for Arcitys because he has this incredible team, obviously it helps to have really good teammates. But at the same time, we've seen Arcitys be an elite player since IW. For a long time now, he has been an elite player in the CDL. I mean, especially since the second half of BO4 and E-United's absolute insanity playing with that squad. Arcitys was great in that game. He was great in Modern Warfare on the Huntsmen, and he is great in this game as well, even though he had a slow start to the year. So as a whole, I could talk about Arcitys and how good and how valuable he's been to Faze, but you guys already know that. So at the end of the day, I hope you guys enjoyed this list. We finally knocked it out. Again, there's so many tough players to nitpick. At the end of the day, all of these guys can be valuable assets to winning teams. You know, the top few players, I would say the top 6 could be the best player on a winning team, because that's just how good these ARs are right now. And again, it's in a weird spot with the whole main AR versus second AR debate right now with who really is a main AR at the end of the day. But I hope you guys enjoyed this one. If you guys did, like, comment, subscribe, share the video if you guys really enjoyed it. It's really warm in my room. I need to turn the AC back on. But anyway, I really hope you guys did enjoy it. But as always, I'm your boy, Abezy, and we will see you next time on the podcast tomorrow. I'm out.